Hey everyone, Ace of Clay here, and welcome to another video. I know I'm a little late to the slime game here, but that didn't stop me. Now, instead of making it or playing with it and doing that whole thing, I decided I'm going to sculpt it instead in the form of a radioactive toxic waste sludge monster. What is a radioactive toxic waste sludge monster, you might ask? I really don't know. But what I did know is that I wanted to sculpt something that I could paint in really vibrant neon colors, which is a huge shift from what I've been making lately. I also wanted to make something completely different in general than what I'm used to, and really go explore some uncharted territory. So that's what I did, and that's what you're about to see. Alright, when I started to visualize this thing, I thought it would be cool if it was this sort of blob monster coming out of one of those barrels that hold radioactive waste. So to do that, the first step, of course, is to create the barrel, and I'm using this can of scrubbing bubbles to help me out. And of course, as always, all of the materials used in this video are listed in the description box below, along with my affiliate links if you'd like to purchase anything. Okay, now after getting the shape of the barrel established, I just used some masking tape to reinforce it, added some bacon bond to hold the clay on, and now I am adding the clay all over the place, being very generous with that bacon bond. I want the bond between the clay and the masking tape to be as strong as possible. And now I'm just going to cover the entire thing in Super Sculpey. And now that everything is covered with an even layer of clay, I am just going over the entire surface with my little chunk of PVC pipe to smooth it out even more. The smoothing process for this was very extensive just because it had to be as smooth as I could possibly get it without losing my mind, so it took a while. So now that we got it to a nice point that I'm happy with, I'm just adding some ridges to the side. So we're starting with the bottom here, a very thin snake of clay, adding that like so, trimming it to size, and then blending it in with our barrel. Here I'm using one of my firm rubber tools to blend the clay together. I've been using this tool way more, and I actually caved and bought a new set just because my old one was getting a little grungy, so I replaced it and it's working great. And then I'm going to repeat this process to create 3 more evenly spaced ridges. Once all the ridges are done and the last one is blended in, I'm going to further smooth the surface by rubbing cornstarch around it with my fingertip. This is a great way to remove fingerprints and smooth things out, as the cornstarch has a very fine grit to it that will sort of break down the surface to make it smooth. Then, as a precaution to prevent any air bubbles from forming, I'm poking a little hole in the clay, not going through the foil. If there's any air inside, this will give it a way to escape. And that's looking pretty good. Don't touch it! After pre-baking our barrel, I am going to paint the inside of it black, just because it'll be kind of hard to get to once I add the slime monster, so I'm thinking ahead here. And I'm using Folk Art Pure Black. Now it's time to rough out the shape of the slime monster. I picture the monster being completely liquid and having the ability to sort of shape-shift into this abstract snake-like form with a neck and a mouth, and maybe he can turn into different things too, who knows. This is just his initial form, I guess. Once I have the general shape figured out and taped together for reinforcement, I am just covering the entire thing with Super Sculpey. And then of course I'm being sure to smooth everything out as I'm adding the clay. Now I'm creating a jaw for this guy. I'm kind of doing this in a roundabout way. I probably should have included the jaw in the initial foil structure, but I'm able to make this work. I just shaped out the jaw in another piece of foil, and then I covered it in clay, and to attach it I just blended it into the rest of the head. I do also add a little bit of Bacon Bond just for some added reinforcement. Now once the main part of the jaw is covered in clay and ready to go, I'm just adding the floor of his mouth with a separate piece of clay, like so, and blending all of the edges in with the rest. And then here I am attaching the jaw to the head, adding some more clay, smoothing everything out and making sure that it's all nice and secure. At this point it's starting to look like a little kid, like cartoon worm character, which is stressing me out just a little bit because I still don't know where I'm going with this completely, but I just keep going. And here I am, I just bulked out the underside of the mouth a little bit, adding some more clay, building it up and getting the shape that I want. Now it's time for some intense exploration and experimentation. I did not realize that sculpting slime would be so challenging, to say the least. I thought, you just layer a couple of blobs of clay here and there, boom, you got slime. Not really correct. It took several different attempts that you can see here for me to arrive at a texture that I thought was acceptable. And here I'm just playing around with different ways to make this work, trying my hardest to get this figured out. And at this point I remember being very skeptical, and I was actually trying to think of something else I could make for this week's video instead of this. But as always, worked through it, I figured it out, and I'm very pleased with the end result. So you'll see. I left a good chunk of the experimentation footage in here just so you guys can see how I arrived at my final design. Now, as you can see, I am jumping from area to area, adding details. I go from the base to the mouth to the base again, and this is just because I'm trying to pull everything together quicker. When I'm trying to figure something out, I tend to go faster. It's almost like I'm trying to see if this is even going to work before I put more time into it. And doing this gives me a better visual, and then when I start to like what I see, I know it's going to work out and I can start finalizing things. Here I'm trying something a little different, making an indent and then crossing that with stringy pieces of slime. I believe this is the point right here where I started to be happy with how this was looking. I was starting to get into my rhythm and I could build the slime off itself. So I had a good base of slime texture down and I was just building up from that, letting where that slime fell inform where the slime above it would go and fall, and so on and so forth. And I just repeated this process until the entire thing was covered in a nice slime texture. I really like how the pieces over the mouth look. I feel like it just really finished that part off. After finishing the front and the sides, I'm just quickly going in and detailing the back or the tail, whatever you want to call it, and just layering some different pieces like that. And it's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with this thing at this point. Now I'm just adding some final drips here and there, finishing them up. Now it's time to add him to our barrel, and to make him look like he's spilling out, I just stuck him in like that with some bacon bond, and that held him there pretty well. And then for a final touch, I am adding a very generous layer of translucent liquid Sculpey to the surface, and I'm mixing that in with some clay softener. What this is doing is it's getting into all of the nooks and crannies and just really smoothing everything out. As you can see here, it looks pretty good. Then once that's done, it's time for the oven. And once it's cooled down, it's time to paint. I'm painting the monster using folk art matte acrylics, and this color is grass green. Now I'm just putting a very nice thin coat of paint over the entire monster. At this point, I wanted to maintain some of that translucency of the clay, so I'm not going in too heavy with the paint just yet. And I really like how it's turning out. That grass green color is a perfect base for our neon greens that we're going to add. Now I'm just darkening the inside of his mouth here with some dark green that I created by adding some pure black to my grass green. And then once the base color is on, I'm just going in and shading the underside of each of the globs of slime. This just gives it some more dimension, makes it more interesting, and it's just watered down dark green. I added a little bit of black to my green base color. I'm just going in to all the details like so. Now it's time for the fun part, the neons. I'm using an assortment of folk art neon paint. And I've never painted with neon paints before, so this was totally new to me. I was a little nervous, but as you can see here, I get pretty confident with it, and I just go over the entire thing with that neon green color. And this looks so cool in person, it's even brighter, and I just loved this whole process here. It was really nice painting something that was like super bright. Like I said before, I'm not used to painting bright stuff very often, so this was a nice change. Now to further brighten that green, I'm just going in with some neon yellow. I'm just brushing this onto all of the raised areas of the monster. That's looking pretty good. I am so happy with this thing at this point. Then as a final touch, I'm going in with some green flash color shift paint, and I'm just brushing that over the entire surface to give this guy a nice glow and shimmer. You all know that I love the color shift paints from folk art, so this one looks really cool on this guy. Now once the monster is completely painted, it's time to paint the barrel. I chose between a yellow barrel and an orange one. I thought orange would look cool. It's kind of in those like 90s Nickelodeon colors. And the exact name of this color is, I think, carrot? Or hold on. Glazed carrots. That's what it's called. Now to make the barrel neon as well, I'm just going over that base orange color with some neon orange. And this looks really cool. It's even brighter in person, if you can believe that. Now it's time to go in and make that radioactive symbol. I'm drawing this on in pencil first, just because I'm not screwing up that paint job. So we're just doing this, and I kind of want it to look like it was just stenciled on really quick, so I'm going over all the ridges and doing that. Doing some quick revisions there, making sure everything is as perfect as possible. Alright, now it's time to go in with some pure black, like so, using a fine brush to outline the symbol like that. And then I go in with a thicker paintbrush to paint the inside. Then once the symbol is completely dry, it's time to start distressing. And this part was a lot of fun. I love doing it. I'm just using an old paintbrush dipped in my base orange color, that glazed carrots color, and doing that. Now I'm adding some brown to that color as well, just to do some more weathering. And an old paintbrush for this was really key, just because the bristles are all screwed up and all over the place, so they create those nice lines that you see here. And I'm just going crazy with it, trying not to overdo it, just because you can't overdo something like this, and I really want to still be able to see that neon orange, so I'm just being a little careful. Then for the last step, I'm glazing the slime monster with some clear casting resin. I'm using Amazing Clear Cast. It is a 2-part resin where you mix equal parts resin and hardener, and I am brushing it on with a cheap glue brush. Always make sure to wear gloves and all of the appropriate protective gear when using resin. Even if it's low odor, it may look fun, but it is toxic. If you plan on resin glazing something, be sure to give yourself enough time so you can stick around after you glaze your piece, because you're going to have to remove drips for the first few hours. I usually check on the piece at least once every hour for about 4 hours and remove the drips with a toothpick or popsicle stick. After that amount of time has passed, it's usually cured enough to not drip anymore. If you don't check on your piece within the first few hours, you'll end up having a bunch of hard little drips all over the place, and they are not fun to remove, and I am speaking from personal experience. So be ready to babysit your sculpture for a little bit. And he's done! Our radioactive toxic waste slime monster is complete. Let me know what you think in the comments. That's a wrap. I really hope you enjoyed this video and you liked watching me make our radioactive toxic waste sludge monster. I think he looks pretty cool, and I love how he looks so different than everything else I've been making. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. The music was provided by Tiff Music. Be sure to check me out on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Ace of Clay, and I will see you in the next one.